What up with ya? Welcome to the Digital Pit Boss Show. And tonight, we about to set it off. We got Kemet in the first intro. Welcome to the Digital Pit Boss Show. And tonight, boom, let's put that on silence. It's 11:25 p.m. And you know, I like to come on late because we don't get a whole lot of people in the room chatting away in the chat box. Righteous, what up to all those coming in the room? Go ahead, share the link. And I'm going to drop some heat. I'm going to drop some heat on y'all tonight. We're going to get it in. This is Kemet in the 1st century AD. The God versus the gods. Right? So a lot of times we got to listen to the Kemetics teach us about Kemet, and they like to start off at 3000 BC. Well, since they already taught way back then, I didn't feel no need to have to teach that aspect of Kemet. So tonight we're gonna go and get in to the 1st century. We're gonna start in 1st century AD, and we're gonna talk about Kemet. Now, lately, Sarnetta brought out a couple of so-called PhDs, right? And one of the brothers, his name is Faragi, and he's old PhD. One of his subject matters is the Coptics, right? But see, when you come on Sarnetta's station, because they're pro-Kemet, you kind of got to be pro-Kemet and anti-Bible, or else Sarnetta will eject you from the show because he ain't playing that Bible stuff, and he don't want to hear that comic book character stuff, right? So I've been knowing about Faragi long ago. He was one of my hit rock pieces, but the kind of stuff that he was talking about back in the day, well, that's not the same Faragi that I recall. So I was like, you know what? I heard that dude speaking, and he wasn't quite talking the same way that he was talking on Sarnetta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little bit of audio. I can't really show y'all the actual video, right? But I'll give you the video title that you guys can go watch the full video yourself. So if you're on YouTube, the name of the particular video I'm playing this audio from is The Coptic Civilization, the African Coptic Christianity, right? And this is on a channel called Logos or something like that, right? So, later on, if you like what you're hearing or you just want to hear more, you can go ahead and Google that, go find it, and you'll see the brother Faragi that comes on Sarnetta TV sitting there talking. He got his little Christian suit on, and, since he's on somewhat of a Christian station, now he got to address them, and he can't really attack the Bible. So we're going to see what he sound like. So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to let this audio play for a little bit, right? So I kind of
his statements at that time were prophetic, if you will, because I would exactly go and do just that. And it was something that was in the air, so to speak, because many Africans, indigenous here to the United States, or African Americans or Black Americans, however you refer to us, oftentimes we wanted to know more than just the European Protestant Christian heritage of which we were brought into through our enslavement. We wanted to understand the Christian heritage pre-enslavement and pre-European contact. So that led many of us to inquire about the Coptic Orthodox Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, and so forth. So during that time, it was in the air, a certain fervor of people wanting to make this connection to this ancient African Christianity. So that's one of the reasons why I took that course, and that course paved the way for me, because once I transferred to Claremont, and Claremont has a reputation for being a center for Coptic studies and a center for Egyptian Christianity. In fact,
all right, now, so I'm gonna pause for a quick second. Now he's talking about ancient Christianity in the aspect of, after the Christ and the stories that take place in Revelations and things. Now he's getting into where the apostles supposedly went around the kingdom of Rome, to which they had dominated Kemet at the time, and Kemet was under the control of the Roman Caesars. And so now he's considering that moment in time ancient Christianity, and he's about to explain how that information was being dealt with in Kemet. Let's go back to the show.
While I was at Howard, I was actually reading books that were produced at Claremont, such as Berger Pearson's The Roots of Egyptian Christianity, another book called Coptic Magical Texts, put out by Marvin Meyer and Richard Smith. I was actually reading these texts before I even transferred to Claremont. In fact, these texts were the reason why I wanted to come to Claremont. I said, wow, I need to go to Claremont because Claremont has a concentration on Coptic church, Coptic studies, and Egyptian Christianity. So I made that decision. I left Howard, moved from Washington, D.C. to California, and began to pursue my studies. I even took the Coptic language for a year. I studied Coptic language, studied Coptic texts, and so forth. And in fact, I remember when I traveled to Egypt many, many years ago, this had to be 98, 99, I traveled to Egypt, and I actually, in fact, I was in Egypt New Year's Eve, 99, and I went to a Coptic Orthodox church in Luxor in my time in Egypt. And I remember the Coptic merchants being surprised when I told them that I had studied Coptic, and I even said a few words in Coptic. To their amazement, you know, I guess they were wondering this, you know, this American had actually studied Coptic in the United States and was excited about it. So, you know, all of this I gained from Claremont. Also, when I was in Egypt, I visited the Coptic Museum in Cairo. And because I was a student at Claremont and had made connections with James Robinson, who's known for his Nag Hammadi studies, which is ancient Egyptian texts, Gnostic texts that were discovered. So at the time, I met Gadat Gabra
in Cairo.
In Cairo,
right.
And
he was the director of the Coptic Museum.
He was a director.
Is that where you visited with him?
Yes, that's where I visited with him.
And now he's in Claremont.
And now he's in Claremont, and
So
I did not know that at the time.
Yeah.
That we would cross paths several years later.
Right.
I was just a PhD student, excited to be in Egypt, excited to visit the Coptic Museum in Cairo. I also visited the, I believe it was this Saint Simeon Monastery in the Aswan area.
Yes.
And so forth.
Yes.
And again, all of this was because of being introduced to Coptic and Nubian studies at.
Now check this out before I let this keep going, right? There is no possible way that someone can claim that we jumped on slave ships, came over here, and we can remember any other form of religions that we had in Africa, but yet we can't identify with the stories of the characters in the Bible, being that this information is being introduced to Kemet in the 1st century. And then it travels over to Ethiopia, it travels over to Nubia, it travels to the Kingdom of the Congo, and travels all across the breast of Africa. And then we see the slave ships and the white folks and blah, 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 and we jump on the boat. And so when they introduce it to us in English, it's really not a story we have never heard. So we gonna jump back to this particular video. We're gonna finish listening up and see what he got to say.
Stayed at Howard, and then of course at Claremont. So it's a field that I'm passionate about.
Yes.
I take pride in the fact that, and maybe I shouldn't, but I take pride in the fact that it's somewhat of a specialized, exclusive area, right. And then at least in American academia, you know, there's not there's a significant number, but there's not a lot of people who focus on Coptic history. And as an African Methodist minister, I think it's a history that we should focus on because it's the foundation of.
Wait a minute. Did he just say he was an African Methodist minister? Do y'all recall him mentioning that to Sa Neter? I don't think he had mentioned that on Sa Neter platform. He would have been thrown him off had he known he was an African Methodist minister. But let's get back to it.
Christian history, so.
I had the honor and pleasure of meeting you about 10 years ago in Claremont while you were preparing your PhD dissertation. Yes. And we were also celebrating the career of Dr. Ernie Tune. Yes. God bless his soul. Was he instrumental in your providing resources and discussions and so on. Tell us more about him, please.
Well, Dr. Ernest Toon was an intellectual treasure trove at Claremont, and he was very, very instrumental.
Yeah.
He donated a collection that has since been named the Ernest Toon Coptic and Meroitic Library. At Claremont Graduate University, the library is now housed at Claremont School of Theology in Southern California. And I remember I was in the reading room of the Institute for Antiquity and Christianity at Claremont, and I was reading books on Coptic history, Egyptian history, Nubian history. And Ernest Toon saw that, and he came to me. He said, "You know what? You should make this your area of doctoral concentration." And of course, he had donated a voluminous collection on Coptic, Meroitic, and Nubian studies at Claremont. A collection that scholars from UCLA said it was comparable, if not more so than any collection here in Southern California, certainly at UCLA. So, in fact, I dedicated my dissertation in the name and honor of Dr. Ernest Toon because of the influence that he had. And of course, I was at the time the first doctoral student, the first PhD student to take courses in the Ernest Toon collection. So I'm very proud of that.
Okay, we're gonna stop it right there, and we're gonna make sure next time he appears on Sinetta that we ask him, is he still a Methodist minister, which I believe he should agree to, unless he then gave up his faith and became fully anti-Bible or all the way Kemet, right? And so in breaking this down, I got some stuff for y'all. We're gonna get into some literature now. So let me share my screen with y'all real quick so y'all can see what I'm looking at, right? And we're gonna move off that real quick. We're gonna get off that, right? So now I got a couple pages that I pulled out just so we can cover some basic groundwork and y'all understand what these little pages are written out, right? So we got the Black Egyptians, the original settlers of Kemet. Let me see if I can blow this up. Well, I don't know how much. Hold on, let me widen my screen out. That way we can get the full text, right? I can't get it too big, but I almost get it. All right. So we have the Black Egyptians are the original settlers of Kemet. Nobody arguing that, right? And the native Sudans are one of the original pigmented Arabs in that region, right? Now we got to get into that word Arab to see what type of Arab they're referring to, but they calling them a pigmented Arab, right? So they are members of the same ethnic family with the ancient Egyptians and the Ethiopians and the southern Arabians, right? So they calling them of the same family. So these particular Arabians or Arabic types or Arabs, they wouldn't be like what we're calling Arabs today. These would be of the same family. So that means they look just alike. They're just referred to in a different way because they're from a different region to some degree, right? So we have the primitive inhabitants of Babylon. They are all founders and sustainers of the mighty Neolithic civilization we still admire today. And they are a very great nation of blacks who did rule almost over all Africa and Asia in a very remote area. In fact, beyond the reach of history and beyond the reach of history of any of our records. So now they're saying that black people live both in what we call in Africa, also in what we call in Asia, right? Which is that's a whole lot of room right there. And that encompasses Jerusalem and the Middle East and just going all the way back. And there's so much history that their records cannot cover the amount of history that's really there. They don't even have full records of it. The oldest they can go back is black. And then from there out, it's just history. They don't even know how much. It's just too much to name, right? So Egypt is a Greek word meaning black. Here's a few pinpoints they lay out. The Egyptians of the Bible were Negroid, right? We can get into that word Negroid and see why they're using that particular word, but we're not really here to debate these small and frivolous terms. We just going over some basic narrative because we talking about the gods and the gods of Egypt in the 1st century, because there's a war. There's a spiritual war happening. You have the ancient Egyptian culture still present in the 1st century. You got temples dedicated to those ancient Egyptian cultures still open, right? You have this new group of people calling themselves followers of Christ, and they have a new information that's coming on the scene.